Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. So, one minute Trump is making it clear that Israel's attack on Iran has nothing to do with him. Then he says he's very much involved. Then he says it's all on Israel. Then he says he's sick of Iran and they should just surrender. Then he gets bombers ready. His position changes on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. So what's with the constant shifting of position? Now, the easy answer would be that Trump's brain is crumbling and that he is too weak to get a grip on the situation. But the reality is a little bit trickier for him. Trump has to actually be quite careful here not to get dragged into a wider war with Iran. Not only would it displease Putin, but his own domestic support base is surprisingly split on the issue. But first, for daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel to stay notified. So for once, there is actually a good reason for Trump to be constantly flip-flopping. Some of his supporters frequently excuse his antics as the madman strategy, that you deliberately voice unpredictable and crazy ideas in order to panic others into just agreeing with you to stop the madness. It's a little bit like when you've got someone trying to climb up your exhaust on the motorway. You're quite pleased when they go ahead of you so that they're out of the way. Raising the stakes sky high, so the other side doesn't even consider the value of their cards. The contest is too much. They back down in order to stop the game. But although this strategy has genuinely worked for others in the past, Trump is not a practitioner. After all, if he were, he would be able to hold up some examples of successes from it, major concessions from negotiations, wouldn't he? But during both his first term and the second term so far, he has gained nothing. Not for America, anyway. He's not pretending to be chaotic and mentally challenged. He just is. Having to back down to China over the trade war came as a surprise to nobody. Similarly, the reason why Netanyahu has attacked Iran, despite Trump telling him not to, is because Trump, despite the strongman image, is just weak. He never stopped being the draft dodger whose family wealth enabled his lack of strength, and probably because of that, cushioning against life he had. He has never developed strength. He's been used to in his life giving orders to people because he pays them, they have to obey. Doesn't work on the world stage. And Iran is a real problem for him. See, we think of Trump as being in charge of this cult, MAGA. Not quite true. His power depends on MAGA as well as more traditional Republicans. The Republican part of his power, yeah, sure, they wish he weren't their leader. But circumstances are such that they rarely challenge him. But they're not completely cowed. There's even some argy-bargy over his one big beautiful bill. But Iran has them split. Don't imagine that there's no real difference between MAGA and Republican hawks just because they're both sociopathic far-right loons. World of difference between them. The Republicans are all for Israel knocking the shit out of Iran. MAGA, not so much. MAGA, represented by the likes of, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, people like that. MAGA are very committed to this notion of America first. And in America first, you do not get Americans killed fighting someone else's battles. If the USA properly joins in with the assault against Iran, Iran would of course be bound, yes, but they would be able to inflict substantial damages on US assets and kill a lot of Americans. Republicans seem comfortable with this because they do not like the Iranian regime. It's not profitable for them. They expect every country to be a cash cow for America in order to justify its existence. But America first are isolationists, and they're not driven by profit like the traditional Republicans. They would like the world to keep giving America money, sure, yes, but they don't want to get involved in the wider world, for good or evil. If merchants would just come along, buy their stuff, and then piss off back to their own lands like medieval fairs, that would be great. Now, the news at the moment is that US forces are preparing to strike at Iran's nuclear facilities, not engage in all-out war. Israel is pounding Iranian nuclear sites as well as other targets, but it is unable to cause any serious damage. Its bombs don't have the power and don't have the precision. To destroy the underground facilities, you need the sort of bombs that, frankly, only the US possesses, and you need to drop secondary bombs precisely into the craters left by the previous ones to get down to the depths needed. Only American bombers can do this. Never mind that US intelligence has said that they don't believe Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons and would be at least 3 years away from delivery if they were. But if Trump can be assured that he can take out key sites without endangering American lives, he can certainly authorise this operation without upsetting the MAGA base, and he would positively delight the Republican hawks. Putin wouldn't be happy, and maybe Trump's reluctance so far has as much to do with his puppet master warning against it as fears of getting America bogged down in another foreign war. Trump may be telling the Israeli government that if he takes out the nuclear facilities that they can't, he expects them to stop their assault. But will Netanyahu agree? And if he agrees, can Trump trust him? Netanyahu wants a forever war to stay out of prison, and MAGA hates forever wars. So Trump's got a problem. The Republicans want to back the Israeli government to the hilt on whatever they want to do. MAGA, not so much. It's not even that they don't think Israel are worth shedding American lives for. They're not even worth shedding too many tax dollars for, nor is anyone else. America first. America first. And they have no concept of America first actually requiring alliances around the world. Though admittedly the Israeli alliance is always an odd one, like for such a mercantile country. It's not clear what the USA gets from Israel. They even pay for half their weapons themselves. There is a certain amount of guilt on the part of Western countries in general, allowing the Nazis to go as far as they did before a reckoning came. I'm not sure that's an unconditional debt to repay. The lack of mutual benefit in the alliance doesn't seem to bother Republicans, but is a bone of contention with MAGA. Neither of his two support camps cares about the operations in Gaza, because that doesn't cost American lives. Not the American lives they care about anyway. It costs money, although MAGA haven't made a huge fuss about that as far as I can tell. Maybe they're fine wasting money if it's used in the elimination of non-white people, especially populations which are predominantly Muslim, if you don't think about the fact that quite a few Palestinians are Christian as well. But they don't accept that American lives should be lost for the sake of a war which doesn't benefit the USA. So Trump's a little bit stuck. If he were a strong leader, it would be easy. He would have banned Netanyahu from ever attacking Iran in the first place. But he didn't. Now he wants to claim he's supporting Israel for the Republicans, but he's not risking American lives for MAGA. Which is why he's really laying it on thick to Iran that if they attack Americans in the region, he will rain down fire and fury upon them. Yesterday, he stepped the threats up. I know exactly where the Supreme Leader is, and with a click of my fingers, he's a dead man. But I'll let him live for now, because I'm nice like that. It's all a desperate attempt to stop Iran attacking Americans, because he fears a huge split in his own support, no matter what he does then. But Trump will have no good solutions if Iran decides the USA has crossed a line and hits back. And I would have thought directly bombing targets which Israel is unable to damage could well be seen as a line crossed. Unless, of course, Trump is able to tell them, look, we're only going to take out this, right? We don't want you having that, but we'll otherwise leave you alone. If you escalate, we'll escalate. Trump ramping up US involvement, though, if Americans are killed, that's not going to help him with MAGA. Their loudest voices would not want an escalation. They would actually want a complete withdrawal. Yes, escalation would win the day in the end, but I mean, when would that end be? And the cost of how many more lives? And for what? What would they get? This is the way MAGA would think about it. What would they get? What would the MAGA family in Missouri get out of it? What would the factory worker in Michigan get out of it? Republican hawks don't care. Their ideology demands very fixed ideas of enemies and friends. Sometimes this sentiment works for good. They support Ukraine. Sometimes for evil. But it always works on these very rigid tribal lines which do not take lives or morality into account. The tribal battles are the only virtues. This is where there's a fundamental difference with MAGA. They care about the lives, not all lives, obviously, American lives, white American lives. Well, white Trump supporting American lives, some American lives. They would want Trump to tell Israel that they are the architects of their own problems, as he has done to Iran and Ukraine, and just walk away. They're delighted he's walking away from Europe, would like him to do so from the Middle East. Unless, of course, the presence serves some good for America, like protecting shipping. That's obviously fine, as long as it's bringing in raw materials for the foundries, not manufactured goods which should be made at 3 times the cost in Pennsylvania. This is why Trump's boasting of no wars on his watch was so appealing to them. It's not because they're peaceful folk any more than he is. They're isolationists. If Trump gets bogged down in a war with Iran, even with America's might, it's hard to see it being over quickly without loss of American life. But he's now in a tricky position. Because he didn't rein Netanyahu in before it all kicked off, he will be unable to do so now. So he's stuck trying to persuade Iran that as bad as things get for them, it'll be a whole heap worse if they kill Americans. And for Netanyahu, potentially, I don't know what's going behind closed doors, I imagine he's saying to them, if you're going to try and claim that the nuclear issue is your key threat, even though my intelligence says you're talking shit, mate, I will knock that out, but you then have to stop attacking Iran. Now, if Iran, however, decides that it is going to, it's boxed into that corner, there is no option but to lash out and it attacks Americans, how will Trump deal with that? Wade in and piss off MAGA? Pull out, piss off Republicans? Which faction does he believe will cause him the least grief if he goes against them? But in the meantime, this is why Trump is trying to force the doublethink. He's both backing Israel to the hilt over Iran, whilst having nothing whatsoever to do with it. And despite the fact that some strong leadership could have dealt with this problem before it arose, that is not an option. Can he take out the nuclear sites, get Israel to consider it mission accomplished and end the war? Can he do this without any loss of American life for the sake of a foreigner who is waging regional war just to stay out of prison? Can Trump get some sort of control back? As with his trade war, once it was unleashed, he did completely lose control. The problem with Nepo babies, they're completely insulated for the consequences of their mistakes, right up until you put them in charge of a country. Then the consequences become too real for your checkbook to bail you out of. Which is why leaders like Donald Trump, like Boris Johnson, got no idea how to lead. They simply can't function in an environment where there are consequences for their actions. They have decades, their entire lives of confirmation bias that they can simply bungle their way through life and things will work out broadly as they would like. So Trump is completely ill-equipped to deal with this. The current trajectory is for the US to become directly involved in the war. If that happens, then when Americans start dying, expect MAGA to make a fuss. What will Trump do? The only thing he knows how to do, I suppose, manufacture a huge distraction to stop people talking about the war. But what sort of dead cat story would be big enough to cover up a war with Iran? He may actually have to nuke California. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.